The polished marble steps of Sterling Tower gleamed under the harsh midday sun, a monument to cold ambition and staggering wealth. Alexander Sterling descended them each day with the same hollow feeling, a ghost in his own meticulously tailored suit. Another board meeting, another merger, another evening of empty accolades. It was a gilded cage, and he was its most prized and loneliest occupant. His driver held the door of the black limousine open, a silent, practiced ritual. But today, Alexander's attention was snagged by a figure tucked into the shadow of the building's grand facade. A woman sat on a worn blanket, a small cup placed before her. She was not like the others who sometimes haunted the city's corners. There was no desperation in her posture, no pleading in her downcast eyes. Instead, she possessed a stillness, a quiet dignity that seemed to radiate from her very core, a stark contrast to the frantic pulse of the financial district around them. Compelled by a force he didn't understand, Alexander dismissed his driver with a wave and approached her. Up close, he saw the fine layer of dust on her worn coat, the frayed edges of her sleeves. But when she lifted her gaze to his, everything else fell away. Her eyes were a startling shade of sea glass green, clear and intelligent, holding a depth of understanding that seemed to see straight through his billion-dollar armor to the weary man beneath. He reached into his wallet, pulling out a crisp $100 bill, the currency of his world, the solution to every problem money could solve. He extended it toward her, expecting gratitude or avarice. Instead, she looked at the offering, then back at his face, and a gentle, almost sad smile touched her lips. She shook her head, her voice soft but firm when she spoke. A melody against the city's roar. She did not want his money, she said. She asked only for a moment of his time, for a conversation. Stunned, Alexander found himself lowering his hand, the bill forgotten. Intrigue, a feeling so foreign it was almost alien, sparked within him. He did not get into his limousine that day. He sat on the sun-warmed step beside her, ignoring the grime, and they talked. He spoke of nothing consequential, and she listened as if his words held immense weight. She spoke of watching the clouds change shape, of the kindness of a stranger who shared their coffee, of the simple, profound truth of a shared smile. For the first time in years, Alexander felt the tight coil of tension in his shoulders begin to loosen. He returned the next day, and the day after that, canceling a lunch with investors, and then a cocktail party. Their meetings became his secret refuge. He found himself speaking to her of things he admitted to no one else. The crushing loneliness that accompanied his success, the suffocating nature of a life measured in profit margins. And she, this enigmatic woman named Alara, offered no solutions, no platitudes. She simply listened, her piercing green eyes reflecting a compassion that felt more valuable than any fortune he possessed. In the shadow of his empire, Alexander Sterling began to find an unexpected and deeply necessary solace. Chapter 2. A Growing Connection. The invitations piled up on his assistant's desk. Charity galas on ivory cardstock, exclusive openings embossed in gold, private viewings for art that cost more than most houses. Each one represented a night of polished smiles and hollow conversations, another performance in the theater of his own life. Alexander began to decline them all with a simple, unwavering directive. His evenings now belonged to the steps of Sterling Tower and the woman who waited there. He found himself watching the clock in his penthouse office, the setting sun painting the skyline in hues of fire and amber, his mind already down on the street, anticipating the quiet calm that Alara carried with her like a shield. The world of finance, of mergers and acquisitions, began to feel like a distant, tedious game. His driver grew accustomed to the new routine, the limousine idling patiently a block away, while Alexander shed his corporate skin and became simply a man on a step, sharing space with another soul. He spoke to her of things that had festered in silence for years. The oppressive weight of his inheritance, the friends who saw a bank balance before they saw a person, the profound isolation that came from being constantly surrounded, yet never truly known. The words, once locked away, now flowed easily in her presence. He confessed that his wealth felt like a beautifully constructed vacuum, sucking the air and color from everything it touched, leaving behind a pristine, empty shell. In return, Alara painted pictures with her words, not of grand estates or exotic travels, but of the world as she saw it from her patch of pavement. She described the intricate architecture of a spider's web woven in a corner of her alley, the unexpected generosity of a street vendor who gave her a warm pastry on a cold morning, the unspoken camaraderie of a nod shared with another person who understood the citier's harsh rhythms. She spoke of human connection as the only true currency, the one thing that could fill a person up instead of hollowing them out. Her perspective was a key turning in a lock he hadn't known existed. Alexander began to question the very foundation of his values, the metrics by which he had measured a successful life. The value of a stock portfolio seemed abstract and flimsy next to the tangible warmth of a shared moment of understanding. He was being remade, brick by brick, by a beggar's philosophy. But as Alexander's walls crumbled, revealing the vulnerable man within, a different kind of storm brewed within Alara. Each confession from his lips, each raw glimpse into his loneliness, was a dagger of guilt twisting in her chest. She saw the genuine need in his eyes, the honest seeking for something real, and the knowledge of her own deception became a physical weight upon her. She had sought authenticity, but in doing so, she had constructed the most elaborate inauthenticity of all. Moved by his startling vulnerability, she found herself wrestling with a growing shame, her carefully constructed mission suddenly feeling like a cruel betrayal of the very trust she had come to value above all else. Chapter 3. The Test of Trust, Part 1. The carefully constructed sanctuary of Alexander's newfound peace shattered with the sharp ring of his private line. It was not his assistant's polite tone that greeted him, but the smug, venomous drawl of Julian Croft, his most ruthless business rival. There were no pleasantries, only the sound of a man holding a winning hand. Julian's words were precise, surgical strikes, each one designed to maim. He knew. He knew about the woman on the steps, the daily visits, the billionaire who preferred the company of a beggar to that of his peers. A grainy photograph, likely taken from a long lens across the street, had already been circulated among a select, malicious few. The implication was clear, the threat explicit. End the embarrassing association immediately, or watch his reputation be systematically dismantled in the court of public opinion. The call ended with a soft click, leaving Alexander in a silence that roared with the sound of his crumbling world. For a long moment, Alexander stood frozen at the floor-to-ceiling window of his office, the glittering skyline below seeming to mock him. The choice laid before him was a brutal one. On one side stood a lifetime of cultivated power, the respect of his industry, the impregnable fortress of his public image, everything he had been taught to value. On the other stood Alara, with her sea-glass eyes and her quiet truths, the only person who had made him feel seen in a decade. To protect one was to betray the other. The old Alexander, the man he was just weeks ago, would have already issued a statement through his PR team, distancing himself from the unfortunate nuisance outside his building. But that man felt like a stranger now. He found her in their usual spot as the evening bled into dusk, a solitary figure against the cool stone. The sight of her, so calm and still, sent a fresh wave of conflict crashing through him. The trust they had built felt as fragile as glass in that moment, and Julian's insinuations of manipulation, of hidden agendas, poisoned the air between them. He sat beside her, the space feeling different, charged with an unspoken tension. He could not bring himself to look at her, his gaze fixed on the stream of anonymous headlights flowing past. His voice, when it finally came, was low and strained, stripped of its usual confidence. He told her of the threat, of the photograph, of the ruin that hovered over them both. And then he asked the question that clawed its way from a place of deep, newfound fear. He turned to her, his expression a mask of raw vulnerability, and asked if there was any truth to the rival's claims. Was there any hidden motive behind her refusal of his money, behind her willingness to listen? Was their connection, the one thing that had begun to save him, merely a clever ruse? Ilara's face paled, her hands stilling in her lap. She saw the genuine torment in his eyes, the fear of being played for a fool after finally opening his heart. The full truth, the colossal secret of her identity, pressed against her lips, a desperate confession waiting to be born. But the fear of losing him in this critical moment, of watching his trust shatter completely, was greater. She reached out, her fingers gently brushing his, a touch meant to anchor them both. Her sea-glass eyes met his, holding his gaze with an intensity that felt utterly real. She assured him, her voice steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs, that her feelings were real, that the connection they shared was the most authentic thing